and welcome back to My Unprofessional Opinion Podcast. I'm your host, Angela. So today's episode is going to be a little bit different. It's something that I've mentioned a bunch of times on this podcast before, but I've never really told the full story. So I'm going to be talking more about like my college experience, my personal experience, because I think there's probably going to be people that can relate to it. Maybe you're in the exact same situation. Maybe it's just something similar, because it doesn't just have to be college. It can be kind of like any situation that this can help, hopefully. I don't know, maybe you just want to hear about it, but let's just get right into it. So at the beginning of 2017, I got all my acceptance letters from the different colleges that I applied to. And before I even got those, I already had my mind made up. I said, like, as long as I get into this one specific school, I'm gonna go there. But you could apply to 5 and it costs the same amount if you apply to 1 or 5. So I'm like, you know what, this one, I do feel pretty confident that I'm going to get in, but just you want to have options. So I applied to 5 different ones. I got into all of them, but I was basically like, as long as I get into this one, I'm going here. So then when I found out that I got into it and I got into all the other ones, I started just like thinking like, oh, what would it be like if I went to this other school? So long story short, I actually changed my mind. I went to a different school. I went to one that wasn't really on my mind until I got to go and visit. So fast forward to September 2017 when I moved into the dorms. I moved out of my house, obviously. I moved away from my family. I moved away from my friends. I moved into a city where I knew nobody and I was starting over. And I'm not always the most comfortable with like big changes like that. I like structure and knowing what's going on. I like to know people. I like to feel comfortable. I mean, most people do, but like I do too. But whenever I moved in, my roommate wasn't there. She's going to be moving in a few days after me because she lived a little bit closer. So she's just going to come like after one of her classes. So I was alone for the first few days. And I think that's when it really started. Was I felt so alone. I felt so isolated. I didn't even want to leave my room because I was so uncomfortable. And like, I remember even just going down to the cafeteria to get food. I had to like give myself a pep talk and be like, you can do it. And it sounds so lame when I'm saying it now, but it was probably one of the worst periods of time in my life. I felt so alone. I felt like, because I didn't know anybody. And I'm not the most like outgoing person where I can just go up and strike conversations super easily. So anyways, I think it was either the day after or the day that I moved in. I can't really remember for sure. I was eating lunch down in the cafeteria and this girl just comes up to me. She's like, hi. And I'm like, hi. And it's like really awkward. And she's like, can I sit here? And I'm like looking around. I'm like, the cafeteria is basically empty. Like there's not many people. So I'm like, okay, like, yeah. Like, so I'm like, sure. And then we do this like small talk and it's like, hey, like, what's your name? Where are you from? What program are you in? And blah, blah, blah. And then her and I connected really well and we became good friends. So long story short, my roommate moved in a few days later. We got along really well. We would do meals together whenever we could, but we did have different schedules. So it's like, okay, if we're both free, we can go get dinner together or whatever. So that part was fine. And then whenever I was doing classes, you know, I was able to make friends with people in my classes, but it was really just like school friends. You know what I mean? Like we never really hung out outside of school. So I still had that feeling of like isolation and loneliness and just like, I was sad all the time. I think this is one of the times where I really realized how much of like a people person I am because, you know, when you think like, oh, if I'm introverted, then it's like, oh, I want my me time. I want to be alone. I just want quiet and I just want to do my own thing, which I think is true to some extent. But then at the end of the day, we're all meant to be in community. We're all supposed to be around people. We all want to be around people, you know, even the most shy person, even the most introverted person, we still want that connection with somebody. So at this point it was good. Like me, my roommate and this other girl, we were getting along. We would hang out, we went go-karting, we went bowling, we would watch movies, we would just do all of our meals together and it was going really well. I still didn't have like a lot of other friends, but I'm like, you know what? I got a few. It's all good. And then the strike happened. So in the middle of October, it was around Thanksgiving time, all of the college professors in Ontario went on strike. All the full-time faculty went on strike. I don't know about part-time, but anyways, they went on strike. And at first it was like, oh, this is going to be kind of cool. Like you're going to get like a vacation. It was like just around Thanksgiving time. So we were already having like a break. But then over a month later, they're still on strike. And it's like, okay, you're paying thousands of dollars for this education. You're not there. And like, you can't do anything about it. There's nothing that we could do. So it was kind of frustrating. And then because of this, because it was so long and the semester is pretty short to begin with when you think of it, like it's not like it's a full year. The college, I don't know if all the colleges, but at least mine decided to, if you wanted to drop out because of the strike and just like kind of get a fresh start because it was so, like you missed half of it or you missed a good chunk of it, you could drop out and you could get your like tuition back and you can get reimbursed and everything. So because of that, my roommate, she did that because she was just in like a general program anyways. This is like, she was doing something to prepare her to eventually go, and she went down to the States, I think. So she did that. So she left, she moved out. So then I come back after like over a month being away, and now I'm alone again. I'm basically at square one. And so I still had my other friends, so that was good. Her and I would do meals together and stuff still, but just like living by myself, I'm like, that's not really what I want to do. You know, I just want to have like somebody else there. Like, you don't even need to be like talking or anything, but just like knowing that someone else is there in case like something happens. I think it's just something that was comforting to me, something that I wanted. So this really just like messed it all up because I was like back in my groove. You know, before the strike happened, I was doing good in school. I had my couple friends, and then we had a few other people that we knew in the residence. So we were good, but then people left. And then when I came back, like, it was just like, you're starting over again, you know? I had that like feeling of like, oh my goodness, I'm like by myself. I'm all alone. I'm isolated. I'm away from my family again because here I had just gotten used to being away from home, to then coming back for like over a month while the strike is happening, to then coming back. So it's like a lot of back and forth, and it was really confusing. It was hard, you know, to make that transition multiple times, to go to and from and whatever. So anyways, my first year, it just kind of went like that. It was really tough. But I think one thing looking back on it is, like I said, I really didn't have much of a life. I didn't really do anything. I went to hockey games. That was like my fun for myself, because I'm like, okay, I need to do something more than just going to school and being in my room. Like, I gotta get out, you know? And the whole like party vibe, that's not my style. So it's like, if that's you, whatever, you make your own decisions, but that's not my style. I'm like, okay, we're gonna find something that I like to do. And then when my second semester came around, it was a little bit better, but it was better because I came home basically every weekend. I came home pretty frequently. I had a class on Friday morning, and then I would come home like after it, and I didn't have class on Monday, so it's like I had a long weekend every weekend. So that was kind of nice. It's like, at least I had that to look forward to. You know what I mean? Like, you had like the light at the end of the tunnel, and you could see where you were going. You're like, okay, like just make it to Friday and then you go home, which, as much as I really liked it because I didn't want to be at school anymore, I think that it didn't help, obviously, because I just kept going home and I kept getting to see my family. And so it's like, you weren't really dealing with like, okay, you know, you're away for a certain time. It's going to be okay. Like, there's phones and you can call and video chat and all that stuff. But I kept going back to them. But anyways, so that's basically how like my first year went. It was really tough. It like felt like it dragged on, just me feeling sad all the time, me being lonely, me being like, what am I doing? Like, why am I here? Like, I just want to go home. It's so much easier back home. I know people, like, I have my routine, I'm comfortable, everything like that. But I think a big part of that is also, most people, when you go to college, that's like your first taste of freedom. You know what I mean? Like, you make your own decisions. You're not necessarily living with your parents or your family, and you get like this fresh start. So basically, when I moved away and when it came to my faith, I just chose like, you know, Sunday morning, I'm like, I can watch church later, because the church that I had gone to a few times, they were streaming their services anyways. This was like before COVID and everything, obviously. So I was just like, okay, like, I'd rather sleep in the morning. I don't want to get up and go there. But I think looking back, that ultimately like didn't help the situation, because when I was saying before, like, I didn't have a life. I wanted to meet people because I felt so alone. I felt so isolated. And this was an opportunity that I really just threw away because I didn't want to get out of bed. I wanted to sleep. So if there's anything that I can encourage anybody watching this, it's like, when you're in college or when you're on your own and when you're making decisions, like, really think about it. Like, what do you want? I wanted a connection with people. I wanted to meet people. I wanted to have friends. But I wasn't making decisions that would help that. I wasn't putting myself in situations where I would meet people. So I think that's really ultimately what you need to look at is, your decisions, are they really going to help you reach whatever goal you're trying to get to? You know what I mean? Like, you go to college to get an education, to get a job, to get a career, to be able to support yourself. Like, there's like a line of things that you have to do. But if you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna like have all this money to be able to support myself, it's like, no, like, there's steps that you need to take. So that's why I said, like, even if you're not in college or this doesn't really apply to you, I think taking principles from this is like something that I've learned, something that I've gone through. You know, there's probably going to be something in your life that you can relate this to. Anyways, so fast forward to my second year. When I came back, I was like, we're not doing this to myself. I'm not going to put myself through this. I'm not going to be sad like I was last year. I'm not going to be as lonely. I'm going to like do whatever I can to meet people, to make friends, to like have a life, because ultimately I didn't have that. So, put myself in situations where that can happen. So on the first weekend, I went to the church that I had gone to a few times before, the year before, and they had their like welcome weekend where they had a bunch of booths set up with all like the different ministries. And so I saw their young adults booth and I'm like, okay, go there, do it, talk to those people. And like I said, it wasn't the easiest thing for me to be able to like go up and strike up conversations with people that I didn't know. So I'm like, okay, Angela, you can do this, like do it. Why not, right? So I went up, I talked to this one girl, and so gave her like my name and whatever, and she's like, okay, like we're having our first meeting on Tuesday, so like come out and blah, blah, blah. So then I'm like, okay. And then afterwards I'm leaving, I'm like, wow, okay. So like now I got plans for Tuesday. I'm like, okay, Angela, you can do this, because the year before I had actually gone to like a meeting for the young adults, and I was so uncomfortable. It started off with these random dudes in the parking lot. They were like just talking to me, and it wasn't creepy. It was just kind of weird. And they were asking me all these like random questions, and then I never saw them again, so that's fine. So anyways, Tuesday rolls around and I get there. I'm there a little bit early and I go to the door and it's locked, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do now? So then I like call my mom, and like I was 20 minutes early because I'm like, I don't like being late to things. So I got there early and I'm calling my mom. I'm like, Mom, what do I do? And she's like, okay, like just give it some time. Like see if you see anyone, because there was no cars there. So I'm like, it looks like nobody's here. So I'm like, what do I do from here? Where do I go? Like, I'm just like at the back of a church, kind of pushed back in the city. So I'm like, what do I do? And whatever. So anyway, so I'm standing near the door, and then I see this guy like walking in. I'm like, go. So I like knock, and then he comes and he's like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm Angela. And it's so awkward. But anyway, so I just started talking to him and whatever. And then so I tell him like, oh, I'm here for the young adults. And then he's like, oh yeah, they're normally late, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay, but I'm in at this point, so it's all good. I got plugged in, I made a few friends, and it was good. So then I'm like, okay, like we're gonna do this. We're gonna go here on Sundays, we're gonna come here on Tuesdays, because it's like, start small, but this is something that I'm at least meeting people. I'm getting out of my room, because when you're in like a college dorm, it's like everything is basically in that room. It's like where you do your homework, you sleep, you watch movies or whatever. It's like, it's all there. It's not like you have a house where you have like all these different rooms. So it's like, I just wanted to get out. It's like, I'm in a new city. I want to like meet people. I want to like, just like have a good experience, because the first year was so not good, to say it lightly. So yeah, it's just like, I wanted it to be different, and you have to do things to make it different, because it's not just going to change by itself. So after going to this first meeting on the Tuesday, I ended up going, I went to the church on the Sunday, I went to the group on the Tuesday, and what was so much better about my second year compared to my first year is, like, yes, I missed home. I missed, like, my family and, like, just being here, like, where I grew up. But I didn't have that, like, feeling of, like, oh, like, I just want to, like, get out of where I am, I just want to go back home, because that's where I know, that's where I'm comfortable. It was just, like, this release, like, off my shoulders. It's like, hey, like, you're going to be fine. Like, you're making friends. You're, like, meeting new people. It's going to be fine. Like, it's not bad to miss your family. It's not bad to wish that you could be at home. But it's, like, the first year when that was all I was thinking about was, like, oh, when can I go home? When can I talk to my family? And, like, all those things. That's not a good thing to be in. So now, a couple years later, it's like looking back at this and just seeing how this one decision, me deciding to just like wake up on Sunday mornings to go to church, me deciding to put myself out there and go to this young adult group, just made the first year and the second year of my college experience like so drastically different. Because like now, I've even gone back and I visited there. I have friends there that I can see, and like two of my friends that have been on this podcast before, Sam and Mish, I met them at school. So it's really nice to see like, okay, this decision, it did pay off. It might have been awkward in the beginning, but I mean, as you grow and as you mature, it's like you're gonna make decisions. You're going to learn from your mistakes. You're gonna learn from your past. And I knew that it's like, hey, if I want friends, I need to do certain things to put myself in situations where I meet people. Then when I meet those people, I need to like get to know them and like build a friendship with them, because they're not just gonna come up and like be my friend right away. It's like, it takes work. It takes steps. So I hope that hearing this story was a little bit encouraging, if you're in this situation, if you're trying to get to like a specific goal, like I hope this is just like a little reminder, make a plan, have steps in order to achieve your goal, and then it's going to be a lot easier to do it in the end. Anyways, that's it of this episode of My Unprofessional Opinion Podcast. I've been your host, Angela. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for new episodes every Wednesday. I'll see you guys next time. Bye, folks.